Alrighty, well, welcome to the Meadow. Maksim, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. We met at an event this summer.
Growing Gardens.
Growing Gardens. Shout out to Growing Gardens.
Shout out Natalie, yeah.
Shout out Natalie. I'm going to get Natalie on the podcast.
Oh, you need to.
And I just connected with you so deeply, and I really, really resonate with the work that you do and your artistry and your music and your mission. We've talked a little bit before we started recording, and there's so much that I want to dive into.
I know. I'm like trying to remember, what did I tell her so far?
Yeah, well, we only had a conversation about Climate Cafe, and like your journey around that and the brand that you built behind it. So, I mean, honestly, let's just get right into, I want to hear a little bit about your journey, both with music and activism. But let's start first, just to begin with your journey around the Climate Cafe, and also maybe a little bit backstory of like where you come from,
totally.
All that jazz.
For anyone listening right now, Climate Cafe LA is the name of my sort of like grassroots organizing mental health work that I've been doing since, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like where exactly to begin with this, but it's like just my channel to gather people to start like bringing awareness to the sort of like mental health and psychological side of climate change and like what these responses sort of look like, where we have this reality where like not everyone can afford a therapist. There's nothing to cure if you're just like paying attention to what's going on and like worried about things, and we can't really train like every single therapist to like or act like that's the response. And that's kind of been like the big motif behind my work, is that you don't really need a special degree to like ask someone how they're doing or to start like really relearning relationality and the fact that like humans evolved to like process our emotions with other people. But when we're doom scrolling alone in our bedrooms, when we're learning about climate change, it doesn't usually have that opportunity for us to really be like, okay, let's not talk about what it is everyone's doing and the actions people need to take, but like, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
Like, how often do we get that? Especially when we're talking about really serious existential issues. And so that was kind of how, I got into this work just by result of an environmental studies degree. And that's always like kind of a fun story, I guess, because I had no intention of like becoming an activist or like trying to quote unquote like save the world or anything like that. It was just kind of this like really crazy opportunity that fell into my lap, because my hometown of Kalamazoo, Michigan was the first city in the entire United States to have a promise program, which is basically because of like a handful of like billionaire donors piling their money together. Every kid who graduates from Kalamazoo Public Schools gets 100% of their tuition covered.
Oh.
Any college in Michigan.
I didn't know that.
No, right?
Wow.
It's crazy. And it's been copied now by like a few other cities around the U.S., but my hometown was the first one. And so I'm kind of like a result of that experiment too, of being like, okay, what happens if you just pay for everyone's college tuition? And for me, that looked like, oh, okay, shit, if I don't have to like worry as much about paying back student loans, like what would I really study to work on over the course of my entire life? And I was like, it's not going to be marketing or like advertising, but trying to save the planet as like a vague concept stuck with me. But like nothing really could have prepared me for what I learned and what that degree was, which was basically just 4 years straight of like, here is not even everything, but like, here's all the different things sort of going wrong on the planet. It was all around problem identification. And then you go to lunch. So I'm dealing with all the normal like growing up stuff that I think we all go through, of like falling in and out of love, like learning how to navigate friendships, trying to figure out like our career path. And I'm also getting information daily about like the dark shadow that kind of like follows all of our systems, and like the exploitation, the pollution, and that it really is just for profit. That's not some like, oh, we have to do this for the great of humanity. It's like, no, just so a handful of people get richer. And that, needless to say, is like super, I'm sure I don't know, how do you relate to like climate anxiety as a term, or if you've even heard that before?
Oh yeah, no, I've completely heard of it. And the reason that I resonate with you so deeply is because I've like, from my perspective, I've only seen the really, really like fear-mongering intensity of like, we're doomed, it's over, there's no hope, like, and not allowing a conversation to be had with community and like, hey, like, how do we take care of ourselves to do this so that we're strong enough to show up and continue fighting for the right cause. So that's only been my only perspective. That's why I'm so refreshed by how you show up in that, you know.
You haven't had someone ever like offer that?
No. Never. No, not at all. Yeah.
That was my experience.
Yeah.
And it was like my senior year of college was when, and I jumped, like my freshman year was when Trump got elected. And I was never like a politics guy, but I dated a Bernie girl when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And I was a skater kid.
Yeah.
And so like our mantra at the skate park was like, homies help homies.
Yeah.
You know, it's like someone needs a berry and someone needs a part, like you hook them up. And it was also like, fuck Zoomies, you know, it's like fuck the mall shop, like buy local, support your local skate shop. So I think I like saw progressive politics and I was just like, oh, like Bernie's populism, you know, I was just like, oh yeah, this guy makes sense.
Yeah.
And I was super jaded when the DNC fucked him over and Hillary lost to Trump. And I didn't even vote in that election, if I'm being honest, because I was like a lot of the 18-year-olds in the US right now that are probably just like, oh, what the fuck's going on? Like, do both of these people suck? What am I supposed to do? But then after Trump got elected, and I noticed it in this last election too, where I felt like a reminder, you know, where I was just like, that moment 8 years ago is where I was like, I don't know what exactly I'm going to do, but I'm going to like push the opposite direction of whatever this shit is. And it was also because like I found out about an oil pipeline in the Great Lakes. So there's like all these little like micro things that led to me actually thinking like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do here, but I'm going to try and do something. Yeah. And I bring up like all of this stuff as part of the journey and how I got into the work because I came to learn from the world of like eco-psychology and unpacking like psychosocial research and how it applies to like climate activism or how we engage on existential threats and process them. I came to realize that like the only reason I was even able to like get to this point I am now is because I had context and conditions. I had like real support in the environment around me to start processing this, to be uncertain, to experiment, to feel these things out. And that's what most people never get.
They can't even imagine.
No, right. Like it's the whole crisis of imagination too.
Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah, right? I mean, like even for a thought experiment that I like from a book, it's one of like, it's such a fun way to like start training the muscle, right? But it's like, imagine a field of corn. Like just picture that in your head. Or anyone listening too, like imagine a field of corn right now. And just like start to, you know, really visualize it, see yourself there. And like, I'm guessing, what does it look like for you? What popped into your head?
Golden.
The golden rose, yeah. So none of that corn was rainbow colored, was it?
Yeah. Jesus.
Is that clear? Right. Like we aren't necessarily trained to sort of see where, what is it, like
where it came from?
Yeah, is it like epistemology? It's like the thinking about knowing or whatever, or how we know things. But it is a muscle that can be flexed and we can start to catch like stuff like that of like there's no reason that we should necessarily be like imagining yellow corn instead of like the rainbow corn that exists in the world, but it's just what we've been conditioned to already sort of.
It's like there's a box that we're in that no matter how hard we think, we can't get out of it because this is like the framework that we've grown up in and the only, you know, how much we've been able to expand.
Exactly. And I think that matters, or that just ended up becoming my experience, like having, you know, I was like a supreme reseller and like bought and sold weed in high school because I smoked and I was like a social kid, you know, and it's like every young person, I think I was like looking for ways to get ahead and looking for ways to make money that I thought were cool, that I thought were like fun things to do. And when I started learning about climate change, it was like a lot of those values got thrown out the window because I was like, oh shit, like how much does this stuff really matter? It's not like consumerism was that fulfilling to me anyways. It just gave me a sense of like identity, a sense of belonging, of like, oh, okay, I have Supreme, I have the Bathing Ape, like whatever it was, you know. And that's how I think things like climate change probably need to be explained. And all right, to tie a bow on it, basically by the time that I hit my senior year of college, like I had jumped into political organizing and activism and was also just like, fuck this. Like, oh my God, you have one politician just tell you like, oh, this is, you know, you would lead a lobby group, talk about issues with them, and they'd be like, oh, thanks so much. These people donate to my campaign though. So go fuck yourself, basically. And you can only go through that so many times as like a 19-year-old before you're like, wait,
what the fuck?
like, wait, maybe this isn't how I create change, you know?
Yeah.
But senior year, I'm reflecting on my 4 years, and I'm like, how did no professor ever say, by the way, here's what to do if you feel depressed, if you feel anxious, if you're looking at society and you feel suicidal? You know, like, these were the things that I was going through. And I already had been struggling with depression as like a 13-year-old now, you know, so, and all throughout high school, and made a lot of progress with like meditation, but feeling a sense of like compassion and empathy for the world, you can't like meditate that away.
Yeah.
You can't like yoga and self-care that thing away, like, and you aren't supposed to. It's like a really vital part of our humanity that we're connected to, that this is a different tangent, you know, but like why I got into climate cafes. This work started with a youth-led startup called Force of Nature that I helped launch like a global startup back in 2020 with an activist named Clover Hogan. That's where this work really actually started for me, because I was looking up, like, I wanted to create like a mental health resource. I still do at some point.
And that was during the pandemic too, right? The 2020.
Yeah. So everything was online.
Yeah.
At the time too, the youth climate movement was getting huge. 2019 were some of like the biggest climate strikes and marches, and it just all, well, it didn't disappear, but it got funneled online. Yeah. All of a sudden, like, so much organizing, the rise of like activist education pages, all kind of like took off that summer, especially after George Floyd got murdered.
Yeah.
And so I was positioned sort of like in the middle of that. And it's what, first of all, I had no idea young people could launch global startups. Seriously. No, like, I didn't know. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, hearing you say that makes me giggle, because I'm just like...
Because you totally can.
So powerful, yeah.
You know,
so fucking powerful.
I'd kind of always been sold, like, the most you can do is, like, a beach cleanup.
Yeah.
You know, you can go talk to politicians, but this was, like, a whole different way of being and operating that, like, you know, the person I worked with came from, like, a privileged background. And I think I just saw a glimpse of that, of, like, oh, this is, like, what lies on the other side of actualizing potential.
Yeah.
And finding, like, a set of beliefs or the context and conditions that really support people to find what that act of service is, and to really like imagine what scale they want that to be.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went from that, and then knew that I wanted to continue doing mental health work. And so climate cafes started as like my question of like, okay, well, I know I want something like this. I moved back to Kalamazoo after losing one of my friends here in LA, and just kind of needing to like hard reset on life.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I think it's important. I have talked to so many people who have like lost friends from ODs out here, and I'm like, oh shit, okay. Yeah. I want to say like, this needs to stop. Obviously, it's not stopping. Yeah. You know, we live in a really fucking like, it's difficult for people to get the care that they need here, you know? But that's to say, like, I went home, reset, and started climate cafes, and like I had kind of a strategy to organizing them, like work with students, get their feedback, give it to the university, and be like, hey, did you know your students are saying this? And did you know that there are interventions that exist to like start working on this? And because if you go straight to the universities, they're like, they're like, okay, but shouldn't a professional do this? Shouldn't you get someone who really knows what they're talking about? And I'm like, that's the problem, that you guys have acted like no one can take care of each other. And that it's like, expensive, and that it's like hard, it's hard to access. And that's what I learned working with Clover, the activist from the UK, because I was 22, she was 21. Here we are launching a global mental health startup, leading conversations like by youth, for youth. And, you know, I think I had some of those same limiting beliefs when I was first working with her, of just like, hey, what are our qualifications here? You know, like, can we be talking about this stuff? And she's like, you know, this is like what we're going through as young people. If anything, we're probably more qualified to talk about it, because we can really channel lived experience. Completely. It's almost like an idea that I have sometimes about like being too self-focused on like yourself, of like, oh, who am I to do this, or who am I to show up, like, when in reality it's like, it's not even, it's so, wow, it's what like, that's you can self-centered. Do. Yeah, that, like, that's funny. Like getting, like, that's like been a theme I've been thinking about, is like, for example, for me, when I get anxious about showing up on social media, or feel like my courses aren't worthy enough, it's like, in reality that does feel self-centered, because I'm putting all the energy and focus on myself, and in reality, like,
getting to get to the point and surrounding yourself with people who can see that and be like, no, like, we need to show up for our people and what needs to pour through us.
Like,
and the
that
service
matters more.
That's where we got to be putting the focus into.
Yeah, wow. That's a great way to look at it. And I think that's kind of what I was going into climate cafes with, of just like, hey, this is just something that I want. I would love to be able to talk with people and just like process this shit and not have to worry about like figuring something out, which is, I don't know, for anyone who doesn't know what a climate cafe is, the idea is just like a thinking and feeling space. And with the ones that I run, the kind of rule is like no lectures, this isn't a space for advice. Yeah. It's not the space to be like, hey, what should I be doing? How should I be? It's
or problem solving.
Right. It's a space to really just be like, instead of saying that, being like, I don't know. And this is what it feels like for me to not know. And to like really, it's really easy for our brains to go into that state, but there are like different states of mind, and the emotional processing happens in our rest and digest state. The drive state is usually what takes over, and it's because we're very anxious creatures. We are sort of fear-driven in a lot of ways, and that's the part of our brain that is getting shit done. That is like an elevated stress level to, go through whatever emotions we need to go through. That's not the part of our brain that processes emotions or like enables our like big picture thinking, like unlocking all of our creative capacity. Like that happens when we feel safe, when we feel like we have a real container to like bring this stuff out. And so that's sort of what climate cafes exist for, to have a container that's like just to bring to the surface what people are already feeling and let them like hold that and look at it and have it affirmed, hear from other people that are dealing with similar things or adjacent things, and recognizing like, we need action. Oh my God. Yeah. There's so much shit to be done. I'm going to make like a TikTok about this soon once I return to that platform, of just like kind of the bit being like, how are we all unemployed? I don't know what your employment status is, but I'm like, I work like part-time and pick up like contract jobs and stuff, and I'm like looking at a full-time thing now.
Yeah, I'm also very freelance, building a business that like, I'm pouring my entire heart and soul into, and also like you were saying earlier, it's like there's so many funnels and capacities to be able to be of such service and to make a shit ton of money.
Yeah, well, because that's like real sustainability. Yeah. If we're, go for it. Yeah, like I hate the whole idea. I mean, there's so much power in finding that thing you'll do for free. Yeah. That thing that like you just care about so much, because I don't know, it's really difficult to sustain any sort of startup without that actual connection to your work. That's how we would talk about climate activism in like the workshops we ran too, of like, ignore the fucking metal straws, right? And like the reusable bag, like those, you end up doing those because you want to. Yeah. Because you just know that it's like a better way to live. Yeah. In my opinion, you should not do that stuff to save the planet. Yeah. And like,
one thought I want to mention is, not to move it too much into this tangent, but it reminds me a lot about
climate cafes too. Like,
say it again?
That's basically it for climate cafes. Like I can talk more about like what I'm doing with that, but that's how I ended up like starting them and then bringing them to LA. There's so much more to this world of like,
let's weave and go back and forth from all of it, because I know
for sure.
a huge part of your life is that you're an artist, and so
I didn't even bring that up.
We're getting into all of it. The Climate Cafe, but specifically, I'm so curious about what it feels like to have that balance of being an artist and an activist, and how
it's so shit.
And how those two interweave, or if you consider them to be separate entities, or if it's a way that you are able to express your thoughts.
It's something that I like really hope I'm able to help people with one day, because it's just been like this excruciating process. Yeah. And the funny thing is that like as I've lived in LA and met other artists that like are in their careers and like are successful or have millions of listeners, and it's like they'd have never like talked about climate change on their page or anything, maybe they have like a song that kind of touches on it or whatever. If like Juliet Ivy's like, we're all gonna die. Oh yeah. I don't know if you ever heard that one. It was like a viral Instagram hit. But I ended up like inviting her to a party, and I'm just like talking with her at it. She ended up coming, and I was like, hey, so I'm just curious, like, do you like worry about climate change? And she's like, every day. So I don't know. For me, it was like, I was an artist first. Yeah. Like writing songs as like I remember my first song in like first or second grade about like dreading going back to school at the end of summer. And so I've just kind of always had this, like, I've just always written songs, but never, I mean, it's around the time that my depression started was when I was like 12 or 13, thinking like, oh, there's no point in doing music because I didn't have anyone in my little hometown of Kalamazoo, Michigan to be like, hey, like, here's how to make beats. Here's how to, like, build an artist identity. Here's, like, what this really means to be an artist in this world. To, like, my, 12, 13-year-old self.
Yeah.
And here's the path that, like, you're going to be on. I had little to no guidance in that. And I think that a lot of people experience that. And for me, I think that was probably closely related to, like, where my depression started. Of just, like, having this side of myself. And I still explored it. Like, I put out some songs on SoundCloud and stuff and would make music. And in college, I would do, like, open mics, I mean, I would literally just, like, go up on stage and rap over a YouTube beat. Like, it was pretty bad.
Oh, it's so cute.
But it was the start.
Yeah.
Like, really, of me starting to be like, okay, let me just, like, put out whatever I want. And I had the kids in my dorm being like, oh, wow, I could, like, bob my head to that. But at the same time, I was processing my relationship to the world and, like, everything that I was learning in my degree. And so I never really identified as an artist. And then I launched the global startup. And so I saw this new idea of what it meant to be an activist, which was like, everything's online now. So it was like, okay, post online and show up and be like, hey, guys, here's my, activism journey.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a while. And I thought, like, okay, I'm like an activist in the world now. And what I found was that I knew intuitively this was an inauthentic character for me. Mm-hmm. I have my gripes with the whole entire, like, activism archetype in general, and maybe we can, like, talk about that more later too, of, like, what people think activism is.
Yeah, let's get into it now, yeah.
Like, oh, wow. Well, I thought it was that.
Yeah.
I thought it was like, oh, I have to post and, like, be this, figure. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. Of just, like,
fit a box of what people expect from somebody. Of what people expect,
right.
To be in that role.
And I was like, fuck, this is not for me.
Yeah.
This is, like, me performing what I think this is supposed to look like, And I trust that that's, like, everyone's process of discovery in general. But that's where I realized, like, okay, this isn't something I can sustain because it's inauthentic to me. But obviously, like, I was still doing the work. So I knew there was something else, like, there that I was just, like, missing. But it was around that time that I was, like, on shrooms in Echo Park. And I was just, like, journaling to myself. And I was like, I'm an artist. That's why I've been struggling this whole time. Like, I just didn't really identify with the term. And then it was a quest to figure out what that meant.
Yeah.
And you know what? I thought that meant that I couldn't talk about my activism at all. I can't talk about environmentalism because, well, people just want the art, right? Like, it's, if people don't relate to those values, then who knows? Or what, because I did end up starting making TikTok content and, like, going viral on there and starting to, like, build a platform around talking videos, around, like, environmental education. Yeah. And so I had this whole fear in my mind of, like, okay, fuck, like,
can't pivot.
Yeah, and I did get, like, my first fans, like, from that, for my artist project. But yeah, it was just this constant struggle of identities for me up until, like, 2 or 3 months ago. Wow. Like, seriously. Before I realized, like, oh, okay, I am an environmental educator. Like, I love just talking. I mean, maybe you can tell from us just sitting here and me just, like, going on and on.
Loving it, love it. I can feel that so deeply from you. This is just, you're in flow. Like, that's, it's beautiful.
It's so fun. Oh, my God. And that's why I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to make, like, a environmental education channel, but, like, teach kids how to, like, talk to trees and stuff. Like, make it really interesting. Yeah. And then that's when I realized, like, okay, and the artist project exists. It's its own container. I am an artist. I don't have to worry about the image of it as much. I did separate it out, though.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is my channel for, like, environmental education. I'm not going to, like, market my music. I'll let it be known that I make music.
Yeah.
But I'll let people just come into it on their own. And maybe that's bad marketing. But this is, like, my next strategy for a year. And I realized, oh, okay, I'm world building.
Yeah.
If people, like, do understand how I think of environmental issues, our place on Earth, like, finding a career with all of this shit happening in the world, like, if people understand that, they'll understand Maksim Snow. And that came to life after I moved back from Los Angeles to Michigan. I had like $1,000 electric bill that was unpaid, and I used my last $1,000 to buy a laptop instead. And it was just like,
we'll
this
figure that out later.
exactly. And I did. So
Yeah.
it was like one of the best decisions I made
Yeah.
for sure. And I just pulled it up one day, opened up Logic, and was just like, I'm just gonna make something.
Yeah.
And it was like my first draft. Yeah, I didn't really know how to produce or mix. Like, you're just going strictly off of vibes. And I brought it to one of my friends who's an engineer, and he like helped kind of throw it together, gave me a rough draft, and it just showed me how much further I had to go. But it really locked into my mind, like, this is possible.
Yeah.
And what I wrote was like this song that I have out called While We Still Can. That was like, you know how breakups feel like the end of the world? It was my take on the whole end of the world equals a breakup metaphor, but like more directly referencing climate change and that feeling of like a relationship being on its way out, and like, well, let's dance while we still can.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And that's what I think, finding that artist identity, you know, that's like 3 years ago now in Michigan, was what I didn't have for the whole time, of like a real reason why I was going to make the music. And like Maksim Snow to me is that container for, like, it's for my storytelling, you know, and just because like that's how I like to exist in the world. But it's really like I want to help people understand the human nature relationship beyond like broad terms like climate change or even like the end of the world tropes. Like, what does this mean for how we fall in love? What does this mean for like how we be with one another, and the types of things that we connect over and value and like choose to prioritize individually, collectively, as a society? Like, I see all of that as like in such a flux state right now. And I think that what emerges will be beautiful. It'll be rooted in like, it'll be like a perspective rooted in probably social harmony and ecological balance. That's like my big picture prediction, right? That like no matter what, we're not going to be able to escape the fundamental human need for those things. And we're watching a society try and like grapple with that more or less, and like a way of life that didn't give a shit about either of those things. New stories, you know, and the fact of the matter to me is
Conversations.
Oh God. And that's like, it's part of like where Snow came from. I mean, I'm like from Russia and grew up in.
You're from Russia?
Fun fact, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I'd love to know that. That's awesome.
Technically, I'm Buryat, and most people
Wow.
don't know about them, but they're like an ethnic minority in Siberia.
Wow, that is so fascinating.
Glad to be here.
And when did you?
I was adopted.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I got lucky.
Wow, it's so beautiful. And to Michigan, and then that's where you grew up in Michigan.
Yeah, I'm like effectively Americanized for sure.
But that's such a fascinating part of your story and your history and your your being still.
There's so much I could talk about there.
Yeah.
It's like it's another fun part of the lore, I guess. But no, to me, like, it was also because I write like pretty sad songs.
Yeah.
But they're usually over like upbeat dance beats, and that's like the contrast that I love, of just like grief really has been such a beautiful thing in my life. Like, it's been awful, horrible, sucks. Oh my God. Anyone who's been through loss, grief, heartbreak knows it. It's like this terrifying experience that rips you to shreds. But damn, do we put ourselves back together? And that's like, I think that's always been the human condition. And it's where I found so much of myself. And it's what I see so many other people struggle with, that just like don't get that reprieve. They don't find that, you know, that safe harbor to like reset, process, find their footing. Or we do, you know, we look for it sometimes in YouTube videos, sometimes in therapy, sometimes in, you know, going bowling with our friends. Like, we do, or we turn to drugs, we turn to escapism, we numb ourselves out and like lose touch with this beautiful gift of life that like, holy shit, you know, I feel like you're tapped in. You get it. You're like, oh shit, no, this really is a blessing. Like,
I mean, the whole reason I started this platform was because I saw life as this creative act, and art and connection and community and conversation to be the catalyst for everyone discovering the deepest parts of their own selves and their path on this world, you know. And like, oh my gosh, so many changes from what you've been saying. Number one,
I'll tie it back to art and activism too.
No, but all of it. I love all of it. I just want to comment on how beautiful it is to hear your path and like the discovering of that path, where I feel like a lot of young people think that they have to like, they graduate and they have to like know like this is my purpose, this is what I'm here to do.
It like
you know?
it sucks not.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's what I hope to eventually turn this all into, is to like really be able to like show other people how to like find and create their own path, kind of like what Virgil Abloh did. Because he didn't really, I think he would have got to sustainability and like social justice more even eventually, but he really understood like the meta of culture and how humans find meaning and create meaning. And he could like play, that was Off-White, you know, it was him like really playing with that and like just putting things in quotes, and all of a sudden this is now a $300 you know, shirt. And that meta being exposed, like to me, I could just see the application to like everything else that we do in life. You know, that like even simple things like Climate Cafe, like it's at its core, like my base work in that is like I just gather people. I gather people and I help facilitate and I help hold space for people to just share. But once you get like the rationale, the cultural backstory, like our strained human relationship with grief, what it means to confront polycrises like the climate crisis and all the connecting social issues that led to it, right? Like once you have that context, things like sitting down and chatting like actually make a shit ton of sense. So I don't know, like I hope to offer that resource one day to like other people, because it really is, the world is in need of so many brand new ideas. And that's the thing, like there's the work that needs to be done and then there's the jobs that exist. And there's not a lot of crossover there yet for a lot of these like really new emergent ideas. So it's like I have been broke, struggling, $10 left in the bank account, like waiting for that next like check to hit for basically about like 2 years. Even when I first moved to LA, I got lucky off of like investing COVID unemployment money in renewable energy.
Wow.
And that's what got me through the first hump, you know? But it's like I have brought it up on my TikTok before. I've been like, I actually don't recommend my path to people. Like you have to be like a really specific person to go the sort of like founder freelance, I'm going to figure this out. Like it's not stable. It's not really sexy. It's sometimes sexy for sure. But God, no, like it's a lot of stress. And if I just wasn't like firmly convinced like the world does need this, people are in demand of it, it just needs that time and like that dedication for it to like properly take form or to like match what the world really needs. Like if you don't have that connection, you will just give up. Like and I do give up sometimes just to be like, okay, need a break. That's the art. Like activists don't really connect with people. We connect with other activists because we're like, oh, okay, that's a great idea. That's a great way to organize. Oh, this, you know, is such an inspirational message. Inspiration alone does not drive behavior change. We've all seen an inspiring talk and been like, damn, yeah, that would be great. I'll go change my life tomorrow. And then we fall back into the same patterns and habits and routines a lot of times. That's sort of like the psychosocial researcher that I'm working with, Dr. Renee Lertzman. This is her whole thing. Is like education, cheering people on, telling people why something is morally just or righteous. Like none of that actually psychologically drives behavior change on its own.
Fascinating.
We need what she calls guiding, in addition to sort of like these few components. So it really starts with like listening, finding out, surprise, right? Like figuring out where people are already at, what they're already interested in, and just like, I mean, at least starting with that. And what I've found in art is that it just has so much more potential to like reach people, connect with people emotionally than what I saw in like activism. But on the flip side, there's a org out here that's like no music on a dead planet, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's already happening with like, I don't know if you saw, there's like a fan who died of a heat wave at a Taylor Swift concert, or during a heat wave. Some artists have had to like cancel shows. This one org that I know that's tied in with like the Music Sustainability Alliance here in Los Angeles, they're doing a whole study on the actual economic cost of like hurricanes, floods, to the music industry, who have now had to like cancel shows, postpone shows, change up entire tours as climate disasters increase.
Yeah.
And so now there is this like rising, I mean, it's even a pretty emergent org, the Music Sustainability Alliance. No one knows about it. It's not really, even like Brian Eno's nonprofit Earth%, like chances are someone listening to this has not heard of that. Have you heard of that?
I love Brian. I didn't know that.
You didn't know he had it on.
Nope.
Did you know Billie Eilish has hosted a climate summit for the last 2 years?
No.
Do you know her mom runs a vegan nonprofit here in town?
No.
That's what I'm saying. And I don't blame the artist, though.
Yeah.
Because I understand, like, none of us really get a deep education on environmentalism, on environmental justice, on, like, any racial justice or social inequality. Like, we do, like, stumble into it. But on climate, like, I think especially not.
And it's not done in safe environments, where I think the most inspirational part of, like, your group is that, like, you're, number one, creating a space for people to regulate their nervous systems, to relax, to feel safe, to feel creative. And then through there, they're ready and capable and able to, you know, be connected to other communities, to be to be educated in the right way, you know. Not that that's the only option, obviously, you know, but it's different than a way a lot of other, you know, people try to go about it.
Yeah, it doesn't, surprise, like, just shouting at people doesn't actually get them to change.
Or that, like, you know, it's all doomed. Like, you need to use your straws instead of, like, Starbucks trying to do an environmentally like, you know, organic. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah,
I realized that, like, well, even like the Juliet Ivy example, or like my friends out here. Because I got kind of lucky with, like, when I first moved out here, I did have a friend who was already, like, established in the creative industry and was able to, like, help, like, welcome me in. It wasn't necessarily, like, my community, because I, like, was not cool enough for half these kids, you know, but I was also figuring out LA, which maybe, I think everyone kind of can relate to. But I did over time, and I could, like, talk to these people one-on-one who are, like, producers, visual artists, 3D animators, whatever, and often, like, for the music industry, and, like, they would talk to me about climate change, or they would, like, ask me questions, or be like, yo, like, what's up with this climate change shit?
Yeah.
Like, no way it's supposed to be 75 degrees in Michigan in December, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm, like, the one quote-unquote climate activist that all these people know, but these people are connecting to how I'm able to, like, explain it or connect with them or, like, show up. So to me, that was like, and then the other half of my friend group are, like, you know, they run labs at Stanford. They, like, are some of the world's, like, leading, like, global youth voices on climate, on social justice.
Yeah.
And what I saw was that friend group was not reaching this other friend group. And, like, that to me is the gap that I want to cross, or like, close
in that bridge
in my life. And, like, some of that is finding out how do you meaningfully blend art and activism? I think that's a huge question for people right now, because we all want to appeal to our fans and, like, try and reach as many people as possible, and we worry, okay, these are, like, polarizing messages, or who am I to talk about this? Or they're really bad at it. Like, Lil Dicky's, like, Save the Planet song was, like, pretty bad.
Yeah.
And it's like that, and I don't blame him, because I'm glad he's talking about it. He got on Kai Cenat's stream the other day, and it's like, yo, this climate change shit. And I'm like, but they were like, oh, but I'm not a scientist, I don't know. So I think the conversation kind of, like, stopped there. But I'm like, we're this close to having, like, someone actually be able to be, like, a voice to it. And to me, like, that's sort of this next step, is, like, we don't need a song that's, like, a bunch of celebrities talking about, like, raising like, okay, we're aware. We're aware. That's like, one of my hot takes is, like, we beat the war on, like, outright climate denial. Like, every corporation, every major government, even, like, the biggest, like, coal and oil groups in the world all recognize climate change. So it's not so much that people, like, don't think it's here or happening, but it's just that we cannot psychologically process it. Basically, that's basically what we're seeing unfold on, like, a massive scale. And to, you know, surprise, because we didn't evolve to process existential threats, period.
Period.
You know, and we're also
we're
trying
built for this.
No, really, like,
we gotta navigate this new
fight or flight. Right? Like, we are hardwired to like respond to immediate threats. It's like, you know, why we shut down with like anything that's like too big, too overwhelming. It puts our body into a stress response, and it's kind of related to like complex trauma even. Different tangent. But yeah, me being an artist and now coming back into activism and realizing, or I was always both, I guess, but I didn't know how to integrate it. I'm still kind of in that process of figuring it out, but I've gotten to the point where I'm comfortable being an open channel. And like, that's what I see a lot more people stepping into, but what I don't know, what I hate to see is it probably will happen a little bit, and I think it's why a lot of people stay away from it is because it's really easy to be performative, and that shit is ugly. You know what I mean? Like, so to me, like, there's no real way around like actual community organizing or like just investment in a community or being in community with people that you can learn from. You know, that maybe like have been doing the work longer. Or whatever that is, like, or being serious about it. Like, this is more than just like having a cute like clap back at someone online. But maybe that's a purpose that needs to be filled too. So I don't know.
Well, that's like how I see just what's coming from like this conversation, like your perspective and how you show up in the world. It feels like such a testament to the power of like, we were talking earlier about like how self-centeredness is actually being insecure about yourself to not showing up in your gifts, when the opposite of that, where I think focusing on your own well-being is one of the least selfish things that you can do, because then from that state you can show up. And we always think that it's so like we're so small and we can't make big change in the world, when in reality, like how I see the ripple effect that comes through one conversation, one collaboration, bring one person from STEM in Stanford and one musician, you know, it's like all these like little magical synchronicities that we think are so minor can have the most immense and massive ripple change from just showing up in your own community to being present, talking to the person in front of you with love and connection and presence. And you know, it's like I think that a lot of like big corporations and media make it seem like it's hopeless and that like who are we to do anything. In reality, it's like what I've heard from you is that like showing up, taking care of yourself, and showing up to your community makes a massive difference, especially when it's guided in the right environment and communities. It's
like because the startup that we launched back in 2020 was based around that, was that the greater threat than climate change might be our feelings of powerlessness in the face of it, where we inherit these stories and internalize these stories of, I'm too small to make a difference, the system's too broken to fix, I'm not talented enough, smart enough, yada yada yada, you know, like
who am
I to do? Aren't there isn't it 70% of emissions from 100 corporations, right? But it's like, we live here too. You can still
too.
You know, you can still go find meaning in capitalism if you want, but I propose all of this as like the modest, the alternative of like, okay, what would it look like to find meaning somewhere different and to like break, yes, all the corporations are polluting. That's why I don't tell people individual actions to take. I just try and figure out like what, with all of this in mind, like, is there an act of service that you want your life to be devoted to? Do you want to think of your life that way rather than a career that you're doing, but like a problem that you're solving in the world? And it's like every single invention, breakthrough, great social innovation, it came from people like me and you know,
and trusting that your desires and you following your intuitive like guidance in knowing that like I have this inner craving that means that I am put on this earth to do that thing, because not everyone has those.
It's such a question,
you know. It's like, I feel like, what are your thoughts on that?
One more note on the artist thing too, because I feel like it's not like, okay, every artist needs to go out and be an activist. It's just that I think the next big cultural change is going to be from the artists, and it is going to be from people wondering like, oh, what could this look like? Because I agree, if it feels like embarrassing or like cringe or like people aren't responding, it's probably because of how you're doing it. And now there's a lot of psychosocial research that says like, yes, that's why. Because it's not about shaming people, it's not about finger pointing even, or you can do those things, but if it doesn't feel like it's working, that there's reasons why. So I just think so much more about the emotional connection and the ability to convene people. God, like, people come to shows. How many artists like start a show by being like, hey, talk to 3 of the people around you before I start and just introduce yourself. take that chance to connect with the people that are here. Oh my, like when I start doing shows, like I want to do shit like that, and anyone can sort of take that idea.
Yeah.
Your question was on.
Well, I guess more of kind of talking back to the idea of just like, who am I, like these questions where it just, or versus just trusting that intuitive pulse where it's like we all have our own, ways that we need to show up in the world and different purposes. And I think also purpose is such a weighted term, where my belief in what purpose is that you're just showing up for what your soul needs in this moment, and it's going to evolve and change over time. But yeah, I guess like just trusting that, like if you have this desire to make an impact and to, be in activism or in art and make a change, and just trusting that and doing it and going for it, because it's like this world has enough garbage and just like dumb media that's like soul sucking. Like if you have a craving to make an impact and create art in the world, you gotta fucking do it. And that's my perspective, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I feel like it's all the Russian writers that like really get at it, of like how crushing it is to hold on to that in this world that it's like it's by design. You know what I mean? And like, God, it's the question of like, what does it take? Because we've had so many of our world's like greatest thinkers, writers, like Sir Ken Robinson, do schools kill creativity? I think it's like the most watched TED Talk ever, and the answer is yes. Schools do kill creativity. And it's an outdated, flawed, shittily designed system for a different time, and we've known that for ages, yet Trump is talking about defunding the Department of Education. Like, the people that are supposedly in charge here, where are they? Like, I do not see anybody who's like
in charge here.
Who's being like particularly responsible about like the life and the society that like we grew up in. And like obviously it's like different for everyone, right? Like the kid who grew up in Detroit is going to have a different experience than the kid who grew up in Beverly Hills. But like I think there's just so much room for change and so little instruction on what it actually means. And this all started for me as like it was barely even intuition. I mean, like I had like seen WALL-E, and I like did like a play of the Lorax and like sang songs about climate change when I was in like second grade because of like my fucking music class teacher. It was about the ozone layer. There was like a song that was like all about like CFCs and like how the ozone layer was burning and we had to save it, and we were like worms or something singing about it. Like, I don't know, it's just so cute, right? And so I've started to find like, okay, and my mom brought me outside a lot, so I just found all these seeds of like, okay, this is where this started taking form, I'm sure, but I had never even like leaned into that connection. It was seriously like one of those what's your major quizzes, and I got environmental engineering.
Wow.
Love problem solving, hate math. So the environmental part stuck. And it really was just wondering like, okay, saving the world like makes sense as a career path, I think. Had no idea what it meant. And so I guess that's like my take on it, is that it's like how Rilke talks about it in Letters to a Young Poet, of like really learning how to live in the question and trusting that like if you're asking the question, someone else might be too. And that's kind of the next step. That's like business 101, right? Is like go find out if people like have the same problem or have the problem that you want to solve. And that's how I've thought of my entire career, and that's how I've built my entire actual like how to try and make money with jobs that don't exist yet, with work that doesn't exist yet, with people that don't even like have job titles or have like a help wanted sign, but it's just you just meet people and you find that they align on the same problem in the world, the same problems that you care about. And if you can really like start with that, it's like Simon Sinek's start with why thing, but it's so real. It's like how we actually, like at that point I'm talking with people and they're like, okay, how can we work together? They're like trying to like come up with something that we can do. And I'm just like, I'm like 27 trying to figure this shit out. So I'm like, I don't even know. Like I don't have like an agency here that that's not really my purpose, I don't think.
And talking also about just like the power of creativity, not in just like the art, but creativity of like creative imagination to create solutions and solve problems that like we don't know exist yet, but that are out there just waiting in like the potential for people to just come in communication and conversation to figure it out and like work again outside the boxes of society that we've been told are the limits. and know that there's, you know, the changes are going to be, you know, made by people that haven't said it out loud yet or something, you know, or it hasn't been created yet.
Yeah. Like, oh my God,
just
think
trusting
about
that it's out there.
all the young people we're like looking at some like kids over there, you know, like they're all going to grow up in this world, and that's who I do it for.
Yeah.
Because holy fuck, if you think that like we're being left behind right now, I'm just like starting to imagine already like the kids that are like 1, 2, 3 years old right now that like are going to be coming into adulthood in 20 years, you know, in the 2040s, which like I don't think anyone is feeling particularly optimistic about.
Yeah.
You know, we're trying to find out if we're going to make it to the end of the century in the science side. Like it's that bad right now. But the whole like we kind of touched on it earlier, you know, like the whole we're fucked. It's the end of the world. Like it's my take on it is that it's kind of a made up trope.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to think that and to grapple with that certainty than it is to deal with the actual like discomfort of ambiguity. And I'm saying, well, this could look this could look thousands of different ways. And it's really stressful to even try and like imagine some of those situations, you know, but I guess that's what we were talking about earlier about like developing resilience. And for all of us, I think, to like learn what that means. And, you know, fingers crossed, like we're in the United States. So we have this like, there's so many various like bubbles of privilege and levels of privilege. But I mean, I saw on a story like last week, you know, before I forget too, quick note, 2 of the big problems in the West are anesthesia and amnesia. So much shit happens all the time that we forget, that we can't remember. Anesthesia is, that's amnesia, right? Yeah. Anesthesia, we numb ourselves. Yeah. We don't have an actual way to like honor all the grief and death and destruction.
And we just numb out and disconnect and aren't available for the good or the bad or any of it and just become just disconnect fully. So I mean,
look, like we saw an entire like area of the US get wiped away by like a hurricane. I saw on someone's story, like on a story last week, you know, people are like, it's been 7 weeks and we're like still like boiling water. And so that's what I think I don't think we've gotten enough of a rundown of like what it actually looks like, but collapse has happened like in other places. And so like, that's kind of a part of my work too, is just like telling the truth. Like all of this, like, no, we have time. We'll figure it out. Like, or, you know, things like the climate.
Figure it out. You know?
Yeah, things like that. We are figuring it out. We are in the find out stage. And what we're seeing is that it is totally changing. You know, like if a disaster hits, your life changes forever. There's not like, that's it. You know what I mean? There's like no going back to the way that life was before. And I think as people actually like go through that and can tell the stories of like what this is like, we saw it with the people that were like live streaming in Palestine, you know, where they're like living through assaults, like bombings every single day. And they're still like, hey, what's up? You know, I'm like with my friends. We spent $20 on water today. Yeah. Like everything's more expensive, but there's still like, we're still here. I just wonder about all that type of stuff.
I saw a quote on your Instagram that said, to save the world, you have to throw a better party than the ones destroying it. And that really resonated with me.
You like that one?
I love that one.
What'd you like about it?
I loved it because it's about being able to still celebrate life and connection and joy in dancing. Yeah. And I know for me, like a lot of people in my life, like when it comes to like the world, things going on in the world, war, climate change. So whenever it's like, you know, the media is magnifying it in one sense and it's really blown up, when in reality it's happening all the time, always.
Yeah, right.
But I think that a lot of times people are like, well, I can't, like, I'm not supposed to be out here having fun. I'm not supposed to be,
it's such a lie.
And it's like, no, it's like by celebrating life and connecting and dancing and community, that is how we create the catalyst for the transformation to open up our minds to the, you know, and so that quote I felt like really, you know, it made it into, you know, the energy that we should be, you know, connecting with, at least in community, you know.
I'm surprised that like more people haven't fully realized it. It's like, it really is like the neoliberal, like white nonprofit space that's just like a stick in the fucking mud.
Yeah.
No offense. I mean, if they actually had the way to save the world, like the problems would be solved. How is your nonprofit running for like 70 years? You know, we're basically like openly admitting that these things are band-aids.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why are they getting millions of dollars? No offense. Some offense, actually.
Yeah.
But and the whole thing is like, okay, these, in my opinion, I see that like these areas also kind of got taken over by like the ideas of like capitalism and output, and that like everything you do has to be oriented around productivity. So the idea of like, yeah, actually maybe we should be having these like huge parties and festivals and convenings that like have some educational component to it. Like a little secret here in LA on the east side of town, they do like panels with amazing like speakers and organizers, and then it'll be like comedians and like DJ sets, and they got a bar there, and you're just like hanging out with people.
Love that.
You know. But it's like in this shared context of like, oh well, we are coming to like hear about labor and like justice and like to feel involved, you know. But like, I'm there because it's a fun party.
Yeah.
And
we get to have both, you know. We get to.
I think so. Well, I think that's like what people are. That's what we respond to.
Yeah.
It's not like a certain type of person is down to go to a protest or a rally or to like go and volunteer in phone bank. We've reached a lot of those people. You know what I mean? And like they'll always exist. The people that do end up wanting to do more.
Yeah.
What about everybody else? We're just gonna leave them out of this?
Yeah.
I think that's like.
If anything, it's like the people who are that's already part of their mission, and you know where they're there, and there's always going to be space to nurture that. But I think the other side is bringing everyone else who necessarily wouldn't have been in that world
exactly
to now, and then to again ripple into their own worlds and their communities.
And it's like not even to tell them what to do, not even to like, you know, I don't give everyone a metal straw or whatever. Like, sure that's a great thing to do, but. Yeah, but just to help people form community around these values and around these ideas so that they have that person or that place they can go to where it's like, oh, this is okay to talk about. This is okay to like bring to the surface of our psyche and to like, and I will get affirmation.
Yeah.
I will get seen and heard in a way that like enables me to start wondering.
Yeah. At
least, you know.
I think that we're entering a new paradigm of, I think, with online, on social media specifically, to start, how I was saying earlier, I don't know if it was before we hit record or not, where so much people telling us, it's like, oh, well, you had to do short form. People only have short attention span. People want quick videos. They won't sit around. And that's like, in truth, it's like, I think we're getting to a place where it's like, that's not true. People crave long form connection, community.
Well, now that we're like illiterate too, it's like we kind of need it, you know?
Yeah. And I think, we're coming close to the end of the podcast, but I would love to end on, you know, what's next for you and like what, I know we mentioned briefly about it, but how you're going to bring all of this, all different sides of yourself, and knowing that you are your own unique, complex human being. And I love the idea of like, you know, creating what we want to see in the world and the ways that we are here to express that. And so, yeah, I just love to hear this next chapter of.
Well, I used to host like climate cafes every single month, but that's kind of been on a pause because the point of it was always for me to like use this platform to start working with like universities, to start working with other like thought leaders in the space, and even to like mentor and train other people to run climate cafes. And I'm now doing all those things.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay, like my personal like activism service scratch on the climate cafe side is getting met. I'm leading a program with like the Climate Psychology Alliance. It's their first like deep dive pilot. So I have a group of Gen Zers that I'm just like walking through all of this, like training them to be facilitators and to like take this stuff. And hopefully I get to keep on doing stuff like that. And I don't know if anyone listening is interested in that, like shoot me a DM. I'm happy to like help bring people into this world. The next one is really like YouTube channel. Like I'm waiting to just like change my TikTok handle because I have to like wait or whatever for some stupid reason, because that's just like important to me. I don't know, I'm in my like rebrand, but I had the whole audience there from like I could talk about climate change and get tens of thousands of views or society, and I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I was like, this is I linked my music to it, and so I was like, oh shit, like now everyone who listens to my music is gonna like, my music isn't already kind of about climate change, like whatever. But I got so self-conscious about it because I was like really afraid to like be myself and be seen as like, oh, the guy who talks about it, until I just like everyone already sees me that way, you know what I mean? And they love me for it. So what the fuck am I even like worried about.
Yeah.
But I think I was linking it all to like my personal account, and that was a big change too. Was making new Instagram accounts and being like, look, I am starting from zero in a lot of ways, but I feel so refreshed by it. And like now I actually, because on my personal, I'm not posting my videos. I'm not like, I was trying to build the artist identity, but then my personal is just people who follow me in real life, you know, who like just know me and are interested in my journey or saw a viral TikTok. And so I, you know, now that I have this, I feel like I've streamlined the process. It's like a meme education page basically, where I'll be like, hey, here's my new YouTube video. So that's what's next, is like returning to TikTok. I'm ready now to be like, okay, I'm gonna like be a content creator. And I was at the fun part, you know, where people start coming up and they're like, do you make TikToks? You know, and I have to be like, yeah, low key I do, you know? And it's so fun though. Like, and I think environmental education, or like how we talk about it, just needs to completely transform. And I'm ready to like do that. My new channel is going to be called Maximism. So it's animism, like the world's oldest religion. Kind of like inspired by that. It's really just about like balance and harmony more than like salvation. And I don't know, that's a whole different, I'll have plenty of YouTube videos about it for anyone watching. But that, keeping up with Maksim Snow, I kind of took a break after releasing my album, my first one ever.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was important to me to have like my artist statement. But now I have like a whole series of like releases that I'm working through and like getting ready, that are all like my more experimental. Some of it's just like nice like postal service sounding stuff, like my take on it. But I'm super excited for that, and to now like build this YouTube audience and keep growing on TikTok, and now be able to have my little artist project on the side and not worry about marketing it, but really just be like, hey, like, I do have this, by the way. You know, like, if you guys understand this, like, maybe.
And just know you're going to attract all your perfect people that are just waiting to find and waiting to discover you.
And that's what I started to do last year, but I had no idea what I was doing. Like, and I ended up posting, like, I had a video that got, like, 2 million views about, like, heat waves and schizophrenia. And I posted it on Instagram, too, on my Climate Cafe LA page. And now that page has 11,000 followers. It was never meant to be like a big page. Like, it was always just my local work. So I felt really frozen by all of that, because I was just like, I don't really want to keep growing this. Like, this is my local work. And I don't want to have all this attention on my main page, because I don't want to, like, it was my personal. Like, it wasn't really the right container for me to have. And fumbled around in the dark for a while, but now I'm like, okay.
You have a new container where you can just stretch your legs and jump around and create your art in the right, you know.
I'm just kind of chilling too, because I like figured out all these new like work contracts, and that's so important as an artist, that you actually are financially sustainable enough to like create. And I learned that the hard way after just like fucking around for 2 years straight, you know, 3 or 4 years. Like, so a lot of like exciting things, but I'm still in the pre-era where I'm like, no one's really heard of me, like, outside of my niche or whatever. And that's like the fun part of the journey, you know, I think, is like having these moments where you're really, really getting to understand yourself and the idea, and like the service, like your contribution to the collective, I guess.
It's the most beautiful, genuinely. When you look back on, you know, when you are in that level that you're going to be or whatever, looking back in moments where you are discovering it and
if what I do matters to people, you know, like that's
it.
That's what I have to. That's what a lot of. That's all it is, maybe. I don't. And marketing, I guess.
I always ask my guests at the end of the show if there's one word that you are going to take with you to this next year, the next season of your life. What would it be? It can be more than one. You can take a moment to think about it.
Maybe capacity.
It's a great one.
What do you think of that?
I love it. I haven't heard that one yet. I think that's
really
cool. I think that speaks on the capacity of being seen, number one, which I think is people like artists and creators. That I think that's like the biggest.
I was terrified of it.
It's the biggest roadblock. I think that so many people who are going to change the world. And again, talking about that self-centeredness, where it's like you don't think of it that way, when in reality it's like, you know, we are so often the ones getting in our own way of. But that's my own perspective for my story, how I resonate with capacity. You know?
I was in my own way for like 27 years of my life. you know.
I feel you there too.
But it's like you do get those moments. Where you do that scary thing. And like sometimes
and
it does.
Capacity grows.
You know, and sometimes it pays off. And you have that moment, and then you're back into figuring it out or whatever. Maybe we never figure it out too, because you talk to people in their 50s and they're like, They're like, I don't know.
Maybe that's part of it too, is recognizing that like we're always on the figuring out it journey, and that we get to be present and feel good about it in all chapters and seasons of it.
There is a point where you do get like locked into yourself though.
Yeah.
Or like you feel that connection to, it's like innate in all of us. Dr. Lisa Miller talks about it a lot. She studies like the neuroscience of God.
Wow.
I'll say like God in quotes,
Yeah.
but of how humans evolved into spirituality. And it's like, it really is this activity in your brain of like feeling connected and like held.
Thank you for saying that. That's such a poignant way of,
Well, we used to have that like in the land of feeling like truly held and supported like by the earth that we were on and like the landscapes we were in. And I think we're all still in our own processes of finding that. And hopefully more of us find that in a connection to nature over as time goes on. I don't know.
And then to community, I mean, I see nature, community, art, that trio is I think. But yeah, thank you for ending on that point, because I think it's so true where it's like, we're all in this ongoing discovering, creating ourselves. It's a never ending journey, but like there are levels to it, and I think it's also there's levels to like your healing, how it's all an onion and whatnot, but like you get to the point where you're like, then you get here and then you're at a whole new set of, how you want to grow and how you want to change, and
like everyone deserves that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's like if there's anything I can do, like, well, my whole take on it, and I'll end on this note, I guess, is that like the simplest way to like summarize my work is basically we all need to hang out. If we like want to actually make this, it like literally means we have to hang out.
Ooh. Fuck yeah.
So thanks for hanging out with me.
Thanks for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for being on the Meadow. I am so grateful to have you here.
Yeah,
is there a certain place you'd like people to find you? I know you're in the transition period, so
I know.
You can let me know. I can add in the show notes as well too.
I'm waiting to change my TikTok handle to Maximism, which we'll put it in your description.
We'll put it in the show notes regardless when it's for future listeners, when it is updated and whatnot. We'll have all the
same
links below.
Same Instagram, same YouTube, and my artist project, in case anyone wants to check it out, is Maksim Snow.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being in the Meadow with me.
Thank you. It was great.